Hi there. Our top story on Indian Express Opinion Videos is the terror attacks in London. The fact that Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Egypt have shut down all contacts with Qatar because ostensibly over terror links that the Qataris have. To explain this terror link across the world, to connect these disjointed dots, I have with me Praveen Swami, the Indian Express's Strategic Affairs Editor, who's just returned from Germany. Praveen, can you please join these disconnected dots?
Gosh, it's more like a soup than dots. London, of course, what we know so far is that the British media is reporting that the perpetrator, the son of Pakistani asylum seekers in London, probably motivated by a hate preacher online, probably had very little to do with Pakistan itself.
They're born in London, bred in London.
Possibly,
okay.
we don't know that
yet.
We don't know that yet.
Okay.
But this is true of a pattern of attacks which have been taking place now all over Europe. We've had similar attacks in Germany, in France, knife-wielding perpetrators jumping out of vehicles, either mowing people down. And this is what the Islamic State has been telling its followers and adherents to do. Don't come to the Dawla, to the homeland. Carry out attacks wherever you are.
All over the world.
Right. And what we know, what we'll probably find if this is true to the pattern, is that this will be a young man in his 20s who is probably a social misfit.
Okay. But radicalized.
But radicalized, and because these radical groups are preying on young men who typically have criminal pasts, often have radicalized in prison, and seem to be looking for an outlet for their violent energies through radical Islamism. It seems to be an outlet for many of these disenfranchised
But it's interesting that the London police actually reacted very quickly. Within 8 minutes they were there, and so that's a big lesson, right?
That's a big lesson.
Dealing with terror.
And this is something that European and Western police forces have worked on in all kinds of ways ever since 9/11. So it's years of work kicking in. If you go back to the Boston Marathon, the medical care was so good that not a single person who was injured lost their lives after coming to hospital. Not one person.
But you've just come back from Germany, Praveen, and the Germans have been quite apprehensive about what's happening in Europe.
Absolutely. And what they're really terrified about is that a large terror attack may set off a cycle of violence. It's little understood, but while terrorism in Germany, we've had that one horrible Christmas Day attack in which 11 people, I think it was, killed. But you've had more than 1,000 attacks now on asylum seekers and refugee camps in which more than 500 people have been injured by neo-Nazi and far-right groups last year. And what they're really afraid of is a large terror attack could set off impetus to this and set off a cycle of hate, which then leads to social dislocation, more people joining Islamist radical groups, then more attacks on minority camps.
And of course, Germany has taken a lot of Muslim refugees from the Arab world.
That's right. It took a little under 890,000 refugees in 2015, some 280,000 last year. And while not all of them are Muslim, many of them from various African countries, non-Muslims, Christians from Syria. So it's often just seen as a Muslim thing. It's not.
Sure.
But many of these people understand it's going to take a lot of time for especially young people to integrate. They're moving into a country where they don't know the language, they will have trouble finding jobs, and it's at this time that they're most vulnerable to radicalization.
But as the leader of Europe, or as the self-proclaimed leader of Europe, how does Germany deal with this?
They're pumping in a huge amount of money into community efforts to integrate immigrants. So they provide housing, they provide shelter, language classes, integration classes, and they're doing interesting stuff in dispersing immigrants within the community. So say 1 or 2 families within communities, and also sensitizing communities to avoid the mistakes of ghettoization which happened with migrants in the 50s and 60s. And particularly trying to integrate women because they understand that if women are well integrated into the community, kids will in time be well integrated into the community. There's of course a lot of right-wing politicians who say we're wasting our money on this.
So now halfway across the world, Praveen, and I want to bring you to the Gulf, to the Arab world. Now, ostensibly these look very disconnected, but the fact that Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Egypt, three big powers. Saudi Arabia, of course, is the home of the two holy mosques. Now, they have cut their ties with Qatar, ostensibly again because of terror links.
Absolutely. They're blaming Qatar for allowing financing of Hamas, which is of course also the Palestinian terror group, which is also backed by Iran. They are irked deeply by Qatar's close links, continuing diplomatic links with Iran and not following their call.
Also Al-Nusra, isn't there something about Al-Nusra as well?
That's right. They also have, Qatar has a long-standing and complicated relationship with Al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda's sort of proxy organization in Syria, and with a welter of other terror groups.
What about the Egypt connection with the Muslim Brotherhood?
Qatar and Saudi Arabia, in fact, though Saudi Arabia fell afoul of the Muslim Brotherhood later, were among the recipients of many, many Brotherhood-linked sheikhs after they were expelled from Nasser, and continue to have various kinds of links with them. Saudi Arabia fell afoul of these groups as in the 80s as the sort of Osama bin Laden, if you like, train began to gather momentum. But Qatar has those links. Qatar also, of course, home of the exiled embassy, if you like, of the Afghan Taliban and a whole bunch of other guys.
Emirate,
in fact, it's joked that for journalists, if you want a bunch of great stories on Mideast terror, all you have to do is sit at the Four Seasons hotel in the lobby, and everyone will walk through sooner or later.
Well, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there, and perhaps we'll postpone that trip to the Four Seasons in Qatar. You've heard Praveen explaining this very, very complex, complicated terror trail across continents. That's all we have for now.